A quiet night in Las Vegas was shattered by a single gunshot, then 7 more. Inside a luxury casino, a young man collapsed on the floor as gamblers fled in panic. But this wasn't a random act of violence. Within hours, the shooter would crash 2 stolen cars, hijack another at gunpoint, and leave innocent people injured in his path. And when the victim's identity was revealed, the entire city, and the police, realized this was much bigger than anyone expected. How did one of the most brazen rampages in Vegas history unfold in just 6 hours? And who was behind it all? Let's break it down. It was 3 a.m. on March 27, 2025. Most of Las Vegas was winding down, but at the Aliante Casino and Hotel, 2 men had just arrived. Their silver Mercedes slipped into the underground parking garage, barely catching the eye of a lone security guard making his rounds. Something about the car, or the way the men inside behaved, set off alarms in his mind. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was experience. Either way, he made contact. The exchange between the guard and the men was short, but strange. It wasn't their only interaction that night, and it wouldn't be the last. The Mercedes moved around the property, pausing in various spots as if the occupants were surveying the place. What no one knew yet was that this car had been reported stolen just days earlier. And these weren't just guests out for a lucky streak. Less than an hour later, security footage would show both men inside the casino, weaving through machines and tables. But they weren't there to gamble. They were watching someone, and that someone would be dead within 30 minutes. By 4 a.m., the 2 men had made their way into the heart of the casino. Surveillance cameras picked them up strolling casually through the gaming floor, blending in with the late-night crowd. They didn't draw attention, no raised voices, no sudden moves, just 2 guys walking like they belonged there, but their focus was razor sharp. The cameras also captured their interaction with a 3rd man, someone they clearly didn't arrive with. His name was Naonche Osborne, a 23-year-old local who, on the surface, didn't seem like a target. The 3 talked briefly, nothing dramatic, just a quiet exchange in the middle of a bustling casino. Then the group split up. Osborne walked away, but one of the men followed, dressed in black pants with a white word, "Carts," emblazoned down the right leg. He didn't rush. He calmly approached Osborne again. What happened next was sudden, brutal, and senseless. At first, the conversation seemed harmless. No shouting, no struggle. Then, without warning, the man pulled a handgun and struck Osborne in the head. As Osborne stumbled back and tried to run, the shooter raised the weapon and fired. Once, twice, then again. 7 shots in total. Even after Osborne hit the floor, the man didn't flee. He bent over, rifled through the dying man's pockets, and took whatever he could find. Only then did he walk away, cold, collected, and completely unbothered by the chaos he had just caused. When officers arrived, Osborne was already gone. The casino floor, once buzzing with late-night energy, had turned into a crime scene. Shattered glass, shell casings, panicked whispers. But it wasn't until they identified the victim that patrol cars were scrambling through the streets, and every available unit in the city was on high alert. The shooter, now armed and desperate, was bouncing from vehicle to vehicle, putting innocent lives in danger. And then it got worse. The stolen SUV tore through the city, ignoring every red light and speed limit. The suspect wasn't just running, he was reckless, unpredictable, and armed. He flew through intersections at full speed, and then came the moment that nearly turned deadly for bystanders. He blew through a red light and slammed into another car at full force. The SUV spun off the road and crashed straight into a bus stop. 2 people were standing there, just waiting to go home. Now, they were on the pavement, seriously injured, victims of a man who didn't even look back. But the suspect still wasn't finished. He got out of the crumpled SUV and ran, not away from danger, but toward it, toward more cars, more victims. Outside a diner, he spotted another woman sitting in her car. Before she even knew what was happening, he was at her window with the gun drawn. She stepped out. He climbed in. Another car stolen. Another victim left shaken in his wake. She immediately dialed 911, and just like that, the chase was on again. This time, it would push speeds up to 170 kilometers per hour, as police closed in on a man who clearly had nothing left to lose. The new car tore through the dark streets of Las Vegas like a rocket, 170 kilometers per hour, weaving through traffic, flying past stoplights, barely holding the road. The suspect was alone now. No accomplice, no plan, just raw panic and adrenaline. But even the fastest car couldn't outrun the tightening grip of law enforcement. As the vehicle sped down a long stretch of highway, something gave out. Maybe the engine, maybe the tires. Either way, the car started to fail. Smoke, jerky motion, slowing speed. The suspect bailed. On foot again, he darted into traffic, scanning for a new target. That's when he spotted a Mazda with 2 people inside. In a move straight out of a nightmare, he flung open the door and leapt into the backseat, gun in hand. He didn't want the car. He wanted the driver. Pointing the pistol at the man up front, he ordered them to drive, away from the cops, away from the lights, away from everything. The final chase unfolded on US Highway 95. A swarm of patrol cars followed close behind. The Mazda was boxed in. Officers waited for the right moment. Then it came. A precision pit maneuver sent the car spinning across the asphalt, Within seconds, cruisers closed in from every side, doors flew open, officers swarmed. It was 9 a.m., just 6 hours after the first gunshot rang out inside that casino. The suspect was finally in custody. When officers pulled him from the Mazda, he didn't resist. He didn't say a word, but they already knew who he was. His name was Aerion Urmsley, 19 years old, and even in handcuffs, he was wearing the same black pants with "carts" written down the leg, the exact detail seen in the casino's surveillance footage during the murder of Naounche Osborne. But the clothes weren't the only link. In one of the stolen SUVs used during the escape, police recovered a black Taurus 9mm pistol, outfitted with an extended magazine. It was a match, the same caliber as the shell casings left behind at the scene, the same weapon that had ended Osborne's life just hours earlier. It was all falling into place: the stolen cars, the casino footage, the hijackings, the injuries, the chaos. And yet, throughout the arrest and initial processing, Urmsley said nothing. No confession, no apology, no sign of regret. But someone else would soon speak, and what he said changed everything. His name was Jamir Marchand, the second man seen with Urmsley at the casino. At first, his role was unclear. Was he a willing accomplice or just in the wrong place at the wrong time? But when Marchand took the stand in court, the truth spilled out. He and Urmsley had met in a juvenile detention facility. That night, they hadn't gone to the casino with a plan to kill anyone. According to Marchand, they were just there to gamble. Then Naounche Osborne walked by. Osborne allegedly asked them if they were looking to buy weed or pills. The conversation was brief, but something about it triggered Urmsley. Moments later, he was gone. Then, gunshots. Marchand said Urmsley reappeared, looked him dead in the eye, and said the words that would haunt him: "Yeah, I just smoked him." Marchand panicked. He wanted to leave, go home, pretend none of this ever happened. But Urmsley wasn't finished. He turned to Marchand and said coldly, "When I do something like that, you can't leave me. You saw what I did. I'll have to come back and kill you too. I don't leave witnesses." Marchand froze. He got in the car. He didn't feel like a friend anymore. He felt like the next target. He stayed quiet. He rode along. And when the opportunity came, he ran. Police didn't charge Marchand. Prosecutors determined he hadn't participated in the crimes, and that he may have genuinely feared for his life. But his testimony painted a terrifying picture. This wasn't random violence. This was a cold, calculated mindset, one with no mercy for anyone, not even friends. By the time the dust settled, prosecutors had built a mountain of evidence against Aerion Urmsley. It wasn't just one crime. It was a rampage, a spree that left a man dead, civilians injured, and the city shaken. Urmsley was hit with a storm of charges: murder with a deadly weapon, armed robbery, carjacking, reckless driving causing serious bodily harm, illegal possession of a firearm, multiple counts of grand theft auto, each one serious on its own. Together, it was overwhelming. But prosecutors weren't finished. They announced that due to aggravating circumstances, including the public danger, the violent nature of the crime, and the high-profile victim, they were considering pursuing the death penalty. That sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Nevada hadn't sentenced anyone to death since 2006. The state hadn't executed anyone in nearly 2 decades. But Urmsley's case, they argued, was different. It was extreme. And yet, through it all, Urmsley never expressed remorse. He didn't speak to detectives. He entered not guilty pleas to every charge. No explanation, no apology, no emotion. As far as the justice system was concerned, they weren't just dealing with a murderer. They were dealing with someone who felt nothing after pulling the trigger, crashing into civilians, or pointing a gun at strangers. Now, it was up to the courts, and possibly a jury, to decide how this story would end. In just 6 hours, Aerion Urmsley turned a quiet Las Vegas night into one of the city's most disturbing crime sprees in recent memory. One moment, he was a shadow in the casino crowd. The next, a killer on the run, leaving behind a trail of blood, broken glass, hijacked vehicles, and shattered lives. But this wasn't just about a violent crime. It was about who the victim was, the brutality of the act, and the sheer disregard for human life shown along the way. The son of a former state senator gunned down over a brief conversation. 2 innocent bystanders nearly killed waiting for a bus. Multiple carjacking victims left traumatized. And through it all, not a flicker of remorse. Now, Urmsley faces a lifetime behind bars, or possibly something even more final. Whether or not Nevada brings back the death penalty for him remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: this case shook Las Vegas to its core. Because it wasn't just a murder. It was a message, one that violence can erupt anywhere, even in the glittering heart of a city built on illusion. And sometimes, the most dangerous people walk in unnoticed.